Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week ahead. This week, we have several very significant shifts happening that are really initiating a new cycle in our evolutionary journey. The first is, it's simple enough that we're in a new moon cycle. That is the beginning of a new lunar cycle. We're just after the new moon in Pisces, and we have the moon currently in Aries applying to the North Node. But this is also the beginning of the Venus cycle, as she's just moved into Pisces today. And in addition to that shift of Venus into Pisces, we are going to see the sun ingress into Aries, indicating a cardinal shift. It is what we would consider in the Northern Hemisphere the spring equinox, or in the Southern Hemisphere, the fall equinox. And that is a big seasonal shift, right? It's a shifting from a mutable season to a cardinal season. And the cardinal seasons always mark the initiation of change. And we have the North Node moving through that initiatory space. And progressively, all of the planets that are moving right now towards the North Node are the personal planets. So we have Venus, Mars, and Mercury all moving towards the North Node. So we can, from a evolutionary perspective, see that elements of our life that are moving towards evolution, whereas they, at some point over the last 6 months, squared the nodal axis. And, that square to the nodes at that time would have initiated a, resolution through the South Node. As each of these planets is moving towards the North Node, we're moving towards a cardinal realignment, I would say. And from the perspective of what do we do with that, right? If the crisis of consciousness in our lives is between our tendency towards separation, our will, our desire, our drives, and right now those elements of our lives are being highly charged by both a strong need to rebel, to liberate from, which can make us want to leave situations, end situations, or at least end our suffering around situations. And the challenge of our evolution also has to do with how we are creating a new identity, how we are creatively actualizing in our purpose as it relates to the relationships in our lives. Are those relationships challenging us? And thus, as a result of that challenge, the force of the pressure, whether it's to change or to evolve beyond something that was known and familiar, right? The South Node of the moon is going to represent the known and familiar past, our past ways of living, conditioning. And you can see everything is moving towards the North Node, right? Everything is on the other side of the square to the nodes, with the exception of Ceres, the mother goddess. So Ceres is moving into square the nodes over these next couple of days here, and will pretty much over the next couple of weeks because of her retrograde. But by now, Venus, Mars, Mercury, everyone has made a conjunction to Pluto and moved on, and they're all moving towards the North Node. And so the strength of our anger, our frustration, our discontent with places in our lives where we have yet to liberate ourselves from our own conditioned patterns, right? We can't really blame others for inspiring us or holding us back. We can't blame others for angering us or triggering us or bringing us peace, right? And I wouldn't, you probably wouldn't say, well, I blame this person for bringing me peace. You would say, oh, when I'm in this, when I'm in this relationship, or when I'm in this place, or when I get to this place, right? Whenever our future conditions and the meaning we make around that, especially our desires, relate to needing someone or something outside of us to change, there can be a sense of disillusionment, especially if that person, place, thing, job, relationship, our resources, our way of living isn't our well-being, right? Isn't providing us with the desired experience. There definitely can be a feeling. And especially, like, for example, if you've been in a long-term relationship and maybe you're growing up and you felt, oh, uh, you had your experience of your family. Maybe your parents fought a lot, and maybe they got divorced, and maybe you know, your father left, and so that was your experience of relationship. That was your experience of marriage. That was your experience of family life. A lot of anger, a lot of disconnection, and then abandonment. So then you might grow up longing for, idealizing, feeling a desire for relationship, but needing to protect oneself because that experience of relationship that you had was what created the framework or the belief system or the around the meaning that relationship has. At the same time, it might have also created simultaneously a fantasy of having a marriage and having a relationship and having that person be your best friend and having that person be someone that celebrates you and celebrates your dreams and desires and encourages you and loves you unconditionally and is available for you emotionally and is on this path with you to fulfill a special purpose or a spiritual destiny or to raise a family. Maybe it's even a very simple desire to raise a family with deep love and care and intimacy and connection. Right? But that desired dream reality is in direct contradiction to the direct experience of what reality in family life was experientially. And so, in order to live our lives both liberating from the pain of the past and moving towards a desired future, we have to, in that journey, simultaneously reconcile the triggers, the hurts, the wounds of what that experience brought up, abandonment, betrayal, rejection, um, unsafety in the family, whatever it was, whatever your experience was in that journey. And while we're facing those things, we're emerging into the possibility of new experience, right? The new moon phase of the lunar cycle is that of that, um, the seed of the new phase taking root. And when we talk about Venus and Pisces, Jeffrey Wolf Green says this about her, the patterning of the Venus and Pisces is learning to embrace on an archetypal level a transcendent value system in order to create a sense of ultimate meaning in their life. The evolutionary process leading to this need has been a series of lifetimes in which the individual has experienced a tremendous amount of personal and social disillusionment. This has created a sense of total meaninglessness associated with temporal values. And with Venus and Pisces not having consciously conceptualized or realized that archetypal intent, which is to embrace a transcendent spiritual value system, right? What is the spiritual value system that we would be transcending with Pluto and Aquarius? Well, it's a utopian ideal of community, and it's a fostering of a sense of equality and peace among brothers and sisters. It's the place in the world in which artists and creatives thrive, and it's a world in which people live free from suffering, and healing is possible, right? And miracles are possible, right? And that transcendent reality, it's a way in which, in that creative state of flow, we are able to be led and guided by a surrendered relationship to the divine that carries us from manifestation of dream to reality. And yet, what most of us experience on a day-to-day basis is some either subtle and or overt form of disillusionment from our dreams. Some subtle form of feeling aloneness, feeling alienated from the kind of dream community life or dream artist entrepreneur life that we might have envisioned for ourselves, that way in which we're living essentially differing from the desire. And that could be in any way, shape, or form. It could be in our work life, in our creative life, in our family life, right? It's then the dream of the happy family is disrupted by the family member who's ill, or the family member who struggles with alcoholism and depression, or the family member who is having, a constant reoccurring pain that doesn't seem to go away from a grief of a death that nobody wants to talk about, and they're alone and isolated in their ability to receive help or healing because they're afraid of what it would mean to be vulnerable, right? There's all these different ways. There might be the dream of relationship, right? And sacred union, sacred partnership, divine connection, where we just feel at home in another's being and feel a sense of safety and trust and alignment in our purposes. And then in our shared purpose, we're building a life together and creating together. And then there might be the reality that that person who is in our life is angry, is depressed, is not happy with their life conditions, is not happy with us, or is um willing or unable or unavailable to give us what we would desire, right? And so then faced with the contradiction of the reality and the dream comes the sense of disillusionment. And this is where we can, if we've given anything in our life, whether it's money or status or um possessions, financial security, relationships, our work or our career, our family or our children, all the various different elements of our life experience. If anything, any one thing has been given all or total meaning, or all or strong power over our central purpose and our desires, well, the effects of that meaning making in particular is going to dominate and to dictate our life. And that is going to really change what happens for us. Because, we can stay in the disillusionment. We can stay in the despair or the grief or the sadness that the things in our life are not the way that we might desire. or we can have the courage to reconnect with our own source, our own power, our own agency, and on a deeper level, what this North Node in particular with Chiron is calling us to connect with the wound, to connect with that core identity from childhood, whatever that was, the abuse in the family, the disconnect, you know, the feeling of being broken, of not being loved or valued, not being wanted, not being chosen, wherever the roots of that are in our life, in our community, in our friendships, in our world. We can even if we don't have any personal suffering, maybe we don't have a personal story of suffering, but we can look at the whole world and easily become disillusioned when we see war and violence and oppression and suffering. When we have family members who are struggling, even if we are well resourced and, even if you've got it all together, if you've got it all together, please let me know how that happened for you. I would love to know how that works, because the evolutionary journey is a constant process. And we think about Pluto moves 20 years through a sign, 248 years to go all the way around the zodiac. No one in this physical incarnation will ever have a Pluto return. But on a collective level, we experience the generational, advancements. And we also experience how slow evolution is. And then there are these moments in our life and time that initiate us, especially Pluto transits can be powerful initiations of purpose, of our shadow, of our core desires, of the deepest parts of us can be activated in a Pluto transit. And what is that directing us to? It is directing us to return to source, right? And the extent to which we are cooperating with that evolutionary impulse and or resisting that is also the extent to which we're suffering with or against the conditions of our life, right? And it's not easy. It's not easy if something in our life is not the way that we would desire to be, to muster our forces and our will and our consciousness to have the right thinking of like, okay, where is this anger coming from? Oh, okay, where is this hurt coming from? Oh, okay, I might be directing it at this person, at this circumstance, at this condition, at this oppressive system. I might be focusing my dreams, my desires. Oh, I'm going to feel better when I have this relationship, when I'm experiencing this manifestation, when I am doing this in my life. And yet I don't know that we really ever experience fulfillment fully as much as we experience the disillusionment of that reality that we place outside of ourselves, which we make the meaning of to need that to be in order to feel the way that we want to feel, right? In order to love ourselves, in order to value ourselves, in order to heal our past, in order to feel safe and secure in our life, in order to feel like we are actually connected to a divine purpose and being even when we feel we don't know where we're going. Even when we are really, the new moon phase is a phase of instinctual exploration coming from within, but it's not lit, meaning that we feel it, we feel the fire, we feel the desire, we feel the pain, we feel the desire to evolve or change, but we don't yet see, right? Not till the full moon in the phases, not till the gibbous, maybe even in the first quarter phase, there might be some greater sense of awareness in in what is happening, right? But it's not as apparent. And this week is a part of that sort of what do I do with this? What do I do with this hurt that keeps coming up in relationship? What do I do with this limitation in my physical health or well-being? What do I do with this desire for more resources, right? And more financial stability? What do I do with the longings of my heart or the desires to create life with someone? How do we move ourselves towards the fantasy, towards the dream? Not that it's a fantasy, but that everything that is manifested in our life does come from the mind, from the ethers, from out of no thing comes something, right? You were no thing before you became something. So there is that element of where we might receive vision or inspiration or have an inner calling, or maybe even not know. There have been times in my life where I've had to make decisions to leave situations, not because I had a knowing of where I was going next, because I had such a strong not knowing. And in that not knowing, it really required me to choose something which would liberate from the thing that I had, which was the known and familiar, right? And that is really essentially such a big part of Uranus, right? The liberation from the known. But how do we liberate from the known and move towards the unknown, the unfamiliar, where when we can't really see the path forward, we can only feel the places where we're hurt. We can only feel the places where we desire for more, And after the moon goes through its conjunction to Chiron and enters into Taurus, it's going to make a conjunction with Jupiter. And Jupiter still, in the shadow of its retrograde. Its retrograde degrees were from 5 to 15 degrees Taurus. So we're still even making up that ground from where we were working things out last year. Most of the time, I think we're not really aware, at least from an astrological perspective, especially with the outer planets, because they move slower, that those particular elements of life experience take a lot longer to be resolved, right? Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto is retrograde 6 months out of the year. It takes a very long time for it to go back and forth, and it's going to go back and forth. It's getting into the shadow of its degrees where it will retrograde during the middle part of this year. Saturn is also going through its shadow degrees. Very soon, Mercury will be going through its shadow degrees. We have in the latter part of this year quite a lot of retrograde activity where ground that, steps that need to be retraced, things that need to achieve a deeper level of internalization before change will ultimately be coming around to us to have that time and space for that. And not to say that we haven't moved forward in these times. I mean, these first several months of the year are all forward direct motion here until early April, when the Mercury retrograde begins. So we have a lot of forward momentum, and it's a lot of it pushing us into unknown territory, inviting us to face deeper soul content. That is what is in the way of having a new experience of life. It's what's in the way of us having the divine partnership. It's what's in the way of us having the fulfilling career or the family relational connection that we are desiring, right? Or the physical, financial health and well-being that we're calling for in our lives. Or and these are things that are about our nourishment, really. The foundations of our life that are about our nourishment, our care, our protection. But relationships, right? Relationships to parents, especially the relationship between parents and children, are those foundational relationships. And if we were disconnected from our mother, if we were if we had a mother whose rage impacted us, or where our desires or our needs were suppressed, right? Or relationships where we had to people please in order to survive, because being the authentic version of ourself meant being alienated from receiving love and care and connection, right? All of these coping mechanisms of life, outside of unconditional love, right? Unconditional love. That's that divine reality that Pisces signifies. That's that spiritual higher purpose, right? In unconditional love, we're not trying to get our sexual needs met, our physical, financial needs met, our, you know, we're not triggered. We're not worried about ourselves or sacrificing ourselves, right? The victim martyr axis of the Virgo Pisces dynamic is definitely activated strongly at this time. And this is like the savior, all the energy of, I have to take care of this person. I have to save this person. It's there. I'm there. I'm there, or they're my savior. I need them for survival, right? And that's a normal feeling that a child has about a mother in particular, because when a baby is born, it does need its parents for survival. It does need touch and connection. It does need, food and nourishment and protection, right? And if those things are not provided, what does the baby do? It cries, right? It's a really natural and normal thing for the baby to cry, because it's crying out. It's a natural and normal thing for us to cry when we don't feel that we have those basic, and we could call these basic needs, the need for, physical, financial security, um, emotional safety, the need for touch and connection, love, the need for personal, desires, inspiration, health and well-being, and even for personal growth, right? We need something challenging us. Human beings can be, very creatures of habit, creatures of comfort. We need the rub. We need the discomfort. We need the hunger, right, to tell us that it's time to eat. We need the desire to tell us that there's something to do, that there's work to be done. We need the sun in the sky to tell us it's time to wake up, right? It's time for us to keep moving our energy. And we need the tears, we need to cry to tell the world, our life, what we're missing in those basic needs. And as we find that, of course, as we're missing things, missing elements, or in disillusioned by things, there's this deeper opportunity for our growth, right? Our growth and our evolution come through those places. And, we're moving in this week as the sun, conjuncts with Hygeia and then is moving towards the conjunction with Neptune. The moon will be moving into the sign of Gemini at the end of this week. Right? And Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury here is in the sign of Aries, ruled by Mars. So this is very strong mental energy. In an ungrounded way, that could be a lot of friction, a lot of conflict, a lot of combativeness that can be challenging, in a productive way. That can be a lot of quick thinking and a lot of easy to react to new ideas and new ways of you know new ways of moving, right? Moving quickly, Mars, ideas, thoughts, Mercury, towards our North Node, right? Towards our soul's purpose. And a part of what we're working with in this as well is Venus, who's moving towards Saturn. And she's moving towards this conjunction with Saturn, which is opposite Juno, who's the goddess of marriage and commitment. The moon is going to be moving towards Vesta, the goddess of the home and the hearth, the goddess of the sacred flame. And, these to me indicate that those primary relationships are foundational relationships where we communicate the most often will need the waters of Venus, will need the feeling tone, the feeling body in order to slow them down, right? In order to be able to ground down into what is it that I actually want and desire. So that whole thing about the difference between the experienced reality and the dream reality or the fantasy reality, and how our desires are really bridging, right? As the moon is building towards this first quarter square, right? We're working towards moving new ideas into that place where they're no longer a thought in our mind, but they're really, we set intentions when the moon is in the first light. That's like planting the seed. But if you're planting seeds in the dark, in this dark of the soil, you don't know, nor do you have any control. If, let's say, I planted a bunch of seeds in my backyard, in a hugel culture bed that I built. And in that, like, the daikon radishes took off, and they really, the weeds took over the bed, unfortunately. And my time and attention went to other places in my life. So it's pretty much like super, the birds probably ate most of the kale seeds before they ever became, because they never really sprouted. My toddler probably uprooted, or my dog uprooted most of the other seeds. But initially I planted kale, radish, kohlrabi, like all these different plants, nasturtium, flowers. And what I have right now is a bunch of weeds and some daikon radish that is like the most gone to seed, overgrown, right? It's like, so it showed me some things about this whole growing. It was my first attempt at building one of these beds, right? So it was a new experience for me. I was just trying it out. Is this going to even work? Right? That it takes a while for the compost of the bed to build within itself and make it a viable. Obviously, now it's going to take the work of uprooting things in order to make it a viable space to plant new seeds for the spring. And that's what we're moving towards, right? We're moving towards spring. And springtime is often associated with fertility, with planting and new beginnings, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the beginning of the fall, which is that turning of the cycle. But what this does for us, at least in the northern hemisphere, is it allows us to feel the power of that initiatory Mars, right? Mars is ruling so much of the chart. And as we come to the end of that week, this really is quite a strong Mars activation. Mars is also going to be ruling Mercury as it goes through its retrograde cycle. I missed, the moon goes through Cancer over the weekend, and then we get into the Pluto opposition point. So in evolutionary astrology, the Pluto polarity point, which is the point opposite Pluto in the natal chart, is one of those key points in that it offers the window or the gateway into the polarization or the opposition to the other side. So Pluto and Aquarius, right? What's the opposition point? Leo, creative self-expression. What's the opposition? Childlikeness, joyfulness, free spirit, fire, right? Opposite air, fire, opposite air. And here we have the North Node in a fire sign also. Aries is a fire sign. So, things very easily could catch fire in this coming week. Wednesday is the equinox, and when the moon is in that trine that day, that first day, to Mercury, to Chiron, I think we're going to have to be aware of our words, especially, and aware of where we're wounded, where we're challenged, where we have the, you know, the propensity towards being in pain or in victimization, and where we also have the desire for something greater. And this is where we have to make the meaning of our lives that we want to make. This is where creative actualization, it's kind of like if your life was an improv skit, how would you make up the story about your childhood, your family life, your current circumstances? Not so that you were struggling, but so that your audience was laughing with you and crying. They were on the edge of their seat, so excited to find out what's going to happen to you. Like, what's going to happen? What's the next thing? How's it going to work out? It's like you're just at the very end and you don't know whether it's going to go this way or that way. When I was a kid, I loved choose your own adventure novels. And when you get to page 68 and the guy was gonna do the thing and walk through the door, and is he gonna love you or is he gonna leave you, right? And if you think he's gonna love you, turn to page 53, and if you think he's gonna leave you, turn to page 121. God, that makes me want to cry. Oh man, what am I gonna do? It is who I am. I am who I am. Hopefully you watch this video because you enjoy and love being with me. But I really hope we get to go to page 53. He walks through the door with roses and he's like, "Man, you look so beautiful today." And he, you know, just blows your mind in doing things that you never expected he was going to do. I'm less inclined to want to make meaning of, page 121. but it happens all the time. We often have these experiences of disappointment and disillusionment. It's part of the evolutionary journey, and maybe he walks out and maybe he does leave. And you never know, like that could be the best thing to ever happen to you. You really don't know. There have been accidents in my life and things that have happened or that I did not expect, that were definitely like the best thing that could have happened to me. But at the time, I did not feel that way. At the time, I felt like this is horrible. Why is this happening to me? You know? So it's a learning. Hindsight always gives us that perspective of what we're learning. And the more we can be with, you know, the growing awareness that we have about ourselves, about our core patterns, about our, deeper wounds and challenges, I think the easier it is to spotlight ourselves on the story that we desire and to make that be possible, not only make the dream a reality, like, yeah, you can have a healthy, loving, emotionally secure relationship. Yeah, you can do the work that your soul is calling you to do, and you can make it financially successful on your own terms in the way that you value, or you can get healthy and strong and you can heal and forgive relationships in your family while accepting and loving people as they are. You can have deeper relationships of community and connection that bring you a sense of, I really have people in my life who know me and who I matter to and who matter to me. You can have it all. You can totally have it all. Um, it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time, forgiveness, faith, you know, and Saturn, discipline, our discipline, our devotion, our drive, all of that has everything to do. It doesn't escape us from the challenges of life. It doesn't escape us from the suffering. The Buddha said there's two arrows. The first arrow is the suffering of life. It is just the inevitable path of life, which includes birth and death. And the second arrow is the suffering that we inflict upon ourselves in resisting the inevitable path of life, right? There is going to be the inevitable path of life, the things that don't work out the way that we wanted them to. All the ways you wanted him to walk in the door and have the roses and be the one declaring their love to you. Maybe that's not the way that it goes. Maybe it goes the other way, but maybe it going the other way is exactly what's meant to be. I don't know. I'm not writing your story. And even when I'm reading the chart, I'm only reflecting, you know, as above, so below, what the stars are reflecting to me. And it's through my own, you know, limited perception. So I do the best that I can with this ultimate belief that it's all for healing and it is all for love and it is all returning us to the memory that we are source. So for what it's worth this week, may you remember yourself even more fully through everything, through every challenge. May you see yourself growing in the light and the fire and the strength of your own new vision for your life. And may the past slough off like water off a duck's back. And may healing be at the center of all of your choices in this week. So I hope, my friends, if there's something that touched your heart, if there's something you want to share with me, please leave it in the comments. Let me know. Please like this video. The thumbs down is not necessary, but the thumbs up is really appreciated. And I love it when you let me know that you feel this in your life and how you're feeling it. It's just really touches my heart every single time. And yeah, I hope that you have a beautiful equinox. This is a powerful time of initiation. So if you're being initiated, know that it's for a purpose. Know that you are on a spiritual path, whether you recognize it or not. And you do have a special purpose in this world, whether you know what it is or not. And that it's just a matter of discovering that within your own story, within your own life. So thanks so much for listening, and bye for now, my friends.